Everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to be doing a bracelet design for you today, which you could then turn into earrings or a necklace, but we're going to be doing the bracelet technique, and I'm going to be using a lot of our DiscDuo beads. This bracelet is actually going to be reversible from one side to the other, so we're going to kind of play up with a lot of color using some of the new colors of the DiscDuos and just using some basic colors of seed beads. This cactus flower bracelet that we're going to create has DiscDuos that act as little petals and then has the 15-0 seed beads kind of on the edge here to make them look like little cactus petals. We're going to be making the whole base of the bracelet, and then we are going to be creating the petals on after. You can see here you can choose to decorate the ends of petals like I've done in the sample or not. So we're kind of showing you the different variations of how this bracelet actually came to be. So you can have a lot of color options and a lot of color choices. If you need any of the materials, the DiscDuos or the seed beads, you can purchase from us online at PotomacBeads.com, or you can go to your local Potomac Bead Company store, pick up some DiscDuo beads, and get started on it right away. If you do need any of the materials, they'll be on the left-hand side here, a little drop-down list, so you can click on that and follow so you can purchase from me online. For the DiscDuos, what I'm going to be doing is using 8 DiscDuos per little flower here. So each flower of my cactus flower has 8 petals plus 2 DiscDuos that are in the middle. For my petal portion, I'm going to be using this pastel Bordeaux, which is a really pretty kind of soft purple color. Again, that's going to be on the petals, so I will see that from side to side. So I'm going to see that as my petals here, taking place of this jade color. On the inside of my flower, because it is reversible, I'm going to use 2 different colors. On the one side, I'm going to use this Golden Touch Sky color, which is a really, really light blue with a little bit of gold touch to it. And on the other side, I'm going to be using the Sandalwood color, which is an orangish color and kind of has that golden touch as well. That's going to make it reversible. So from one side, it's going to look like that aqua and purple, and the other side, it's going to look like the orange and purple. In between each little section of my flowers, I'm also going to have DiscDuos. These 2 will be different colors since it's reversible. In between the flowers, before I start the next one here, I'm going to use the pastel petrol color when I'm using the aqua, and I'm going to use the bronze color, the jet bronze, when I'm using the sandalwood. So the sandalwood will have the jet bronze right next to the orange, and the other side will have the pastel petrol right next to that sky color. In addition to my DiscDuos, again, which I'm using in 4 different colors, 8 for each flower, you're most likely going to end up with about 5 to 6 flowers on your bracelet. So that'll give you an idea how many you need to do total. We are going to be using those 4 colors, and then I'm just going to keep it very simple when it comes to seed beads, which I do a lot. I'm going to be using 15s and 11s. For the 15 color, I am using the galvanized dark yellow gold. I like that gold color. And then for the 11-0s, I'm using the crystal Labrador, which is a nice bright silver to kind of highlight the middle of my flower. In addition to my seed beads, I am using some thread. For my color mix here, I'm going to stick with my green thread. I'm using 0.006 Wildfire beading thread in that green color. I also have handy some super new glue in case you want to knot the ends of your thread. And I have my thread burner here. There's the threads up too. There's also the Ultra or the Beadon cord cutter. I have them all sitting around. This is the one that I happen to have sitting here. I am going to be using a size 10 needle. If you struggle with a size 10, go with a size 12. The thinner needle will allow you to go through the DiscDuos a little bit easier. I prefer the 10 because I don't like how easily a lot of the 12s bend. So I'm sticking with the 10 for this. I am working on my BeadOnIt board. Just because it's that nice bright color underneath for you to see a lot what you're doing. You could also be working on a bead map. I'm going to close off my whole bracelet with this faceted Potomac crystal button, and this is just the crystal AB color. I figured that matches everything, so that's a good way to go. The other one that I was toying with was the magic blue, because that had the purple and blue in it too, but I went with the crystal AB. To get started, we are going to do our base line of our bracelet. If you kind of ignore the petals here, you can see the DiscDuos, one side and then the other side. I intentionally use the gold on one and the purple on the other. To get started, to create that baseline, I am going to take my needle and thread, and I'm going to cut about 6 feet of beading thread. This project uses a lot of thread, so just be aware in the project I'll show you how to add thread as well. But right now what I'm going to do is separate my beads out a little bit, kind of pushing them off to the side because I will be using them all. And we are using our 15 OC beads to start. Pour out a couple of 11s because we're going to use those for our clasp, but get your 6 feet onto your beading thread and we'll get ready to create our little baseline. In order to get started, I'm actually going to add a stop bead to my project. The stop bead that I add to my project, I'm just going to use my silver bead and put that on my needle. I'm taking that to the very base of my thread, just leaving about a 2-inch tail, going through that bead 2 times. That will expose the thread on the outside of the bead, which will eventually come off. If I have another bead sitting around that's not part of my project, I like to use that as well. To start my baseline of my project, I'm going to be simply going down one side of the project, adding in my 15 O's and my DiscDuo beads. To add the 15 O's in place, and the DiscDuos, I'm just going to move into view the ones that I'll be using and alternating. So right now I'm starting off with my blue colors. And the first thing I'm going to do is add one of my darker blues because I don't want a flower to sit right next to the edge. And the darker blue is going to be the side color rather than the middle of the flower. I'm going to drop one of those pastel petrol DiscDuos down next to my stop bead. And then I'm going to pick up my little 15 O seed beads here. I'm going to pick up my 5 15 O's, and then I'm going to add one of my Golden Touch Sky colors. 5 more 15 O's, and then a pastel petrol. Repeating 5 15s, and then switching to the regal color, or to that sky color. Again, 5 15s, switching off to my pastel petrol color. So I'm going to continue this whole line here. These look really pretty with the gold. I'm going to continue this whole line here, adding 5 of my 15 O's with my little DiscDuos in between, alternating the color. I want to do this for about 6 3/4 inches because then I'm going to add one side of my clasp and come back down the other side, adding 15 O's in place as well. So you want to go ahead and do this for about a 1/2 inch less than what your bracelet is actually going to be total in size. So I've gotten to the end of adding my beads here. I'm actually going to end up with 7 of my flowers. You want to make sure that whatever color you started with, you end with. If you need to change the spacing for the number in between of the seed beads in order to do so that it fits, you can do that. It's not really going to affect the design that much if you add an extra seed bead in there, if you want a little bit less flowers or if you do have a little bit of a size variation. When I get to the end here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready to add my button. To add the button, we're going to repeat the pattern of 5 of my 15 O's coming out the end, just like I would be getting ready to put on my next DiscDuo. From there, I'm going to add 3 of my silver 11s and go up the back of my button, coming out one of the holes. Once I'm out the top, I'm going to add a silver, 3 gold, and a silver. So 111, 315s, 111. And I'm going to go through the faceted button so that my thread is on an angle. What that's going to do is it's going to decorate the inside of the button. So when you see it here, you want to make sure that you're not going side by side. I think I just did here. You want to go through on an angle. So you want to stretch from one hole across to the other. That's going to decorate the middle of that button with just a little bit of seed beads and a little bit of that seed bead trim. Coming out of the button, I'm going to add my 3 11-ohs just like I did on the other side, or 3 11-ohs just like I did on the other side. And then we're going to add our 15s. Those 5 15s. And I'm going to come back down the other side of my DiscDuos. When I come down this side now, all I'm going to be doing very simply is adding 5 beads of my 15s in between and catching the second hole of the DiscDuo that's already on. So I have 5 15s on and sewing right down the line. Continue to do this, adding the 5 15s in the whole way back to the beginning end, getting back to that stop bead. Once you've gone down the end here and you're coming out your last DiscDuo, it's time to add the loop in order for the faceted button to sit in. To add that loop, I'm going to start out with my 5 15-0 seed beads, just like I did on the other side. Then I'm going to add 30 of my 11-ohs onto my thread. After my 30 11-ohs, I'm going to use 5 more of my 15-0 seed beads. To lock that in and to create the loop, I'm going to go down that pastel petrol DiscDuo and pull the thread tight. That creates my loop in order for my cut button, or I'm sorry, my faceted button to sit inside. To add my next level of my DiscDuos, I'm going to be doing basically the same thing, adding my 5 beads in between each of my DiscDuos. As I switch from the top to the bottom of the bracelet, I'm going to be switching colors. Next to the pastel petrol, or below it, I'm going to be using the jet bronze color. Next to that sky color, I'm going to be using the sandalwood color. So when you're on top of those beads, you know to switch to those colors. So just like our baseline here, the next line is going to alternate colors as well. When I'm in between the beads, or when I'm in between the DiscDuos, I'm also going to run 5 seed beads. If you want to, you could switch the color of seed beads if you do want the seed beads to be different from one side to the other. In order to get ready to add my DiscDuo beads, I'm going to sew from the bottom of this pastel petrol here to the top of the petrol, going from the right side here to the left side. A little bit of thread will be exposed underneath that DiscDuo bead, but you won't see it because of the color of the thread and because by the time we get all the flowers in, they'll really cover most of that line. Once you're coming out of the top of that pastel petrol bead, we're going to go ahead and add our jet bronze bead. To add our jet bronze bead, we're going to square stitch it into place by adding a 15-0, our jet bronze, and a 15-0. I'm then going to go back through that pastel petrol color, going from the base towards the loop, coming out right after that pastel petrol bead. Once I square stitch that bead into place, I'm going to go back through the 15-0 and out the jet bronze bead. When I'm out the jet bronze, and adding the bronze color in, I'm going to be adding these 11 O's to kind of decorate the side so you don't see any thread. When I'm in between the beads that are going to be the center of the flower, I'm not going to worry about it because you're not going to see them at all. In between each of my DiscDuo beads, I am going to add my 5 15-0 seed beads just like I did on the baseline. I'm then going to add my sandalwood bead. So up through the next DiscDuo in line, and then sew down through that sandalwood bead. So that's doing that square stitch to get that connected. When I'm coming out that sandalwood bead, I'm going to add my 5 seed beads and my next jet bronze. After my jet bronze, I'm also going to include one 11-0 seed bead or 15-0 seed bead and sew up through the pastel petrol. When I'm out the top of the pastel petrol, I'm going to add one 15-0 and sew down through the jet bronze. Again, I know I'm back to that sandalwood color, so I'm going to add 5 15s. Add my sandalwood bead. So up through the next DiscDuo, which is going to be that sky color. So down through the sandalwood. Getting ready to put the jet bronze on again then. 5 15s go on. Jet bronze. 1 15 up through the pastel petrol. Coming out that pastel petrol color, add 1 15 and then sew down through the bronze DiscDuo. Continue doing this the whole length of the bracelet, adding the DiscDuos right beside the pastel petrol and the sandalwood right next to the sky. Once I'm at the end of the bracelet here and I've added all my sandalwood and my jet bronze into place, I'm going to switch over and lock these DiscDuos so they're sitting directly over top of my first row. To do that, I'm going to be doing the square stitch just like I did previously. To do so, I'm going to go down my last jet bronze DiscDuo, pick up a 15-0, go up through that pastel petrol color. Make sure that 15-0 wants to sit right where it should, right between and joining those two pastel petrol and the jet bronze. Add another 15-0 on and come back down the jet bronze. When I'm in between the jet bronze and the sandalwood, all I'm going to do is add my 5 15s, sew through that sandalwood bead. When I'm coming out the sandalwood, I'm going to square stitch onto that sky bead underneath, going through that sky colored bead up towards the button. Get that knot out of there. And then back down through the sandalwood color. Once I'm out that sandalwood color, what I'm going to do is add 5 more 15s, because I'm always creating that baseline of those 5 15s. I'm going to sew down through my 15 or my jet bronze, locking those 5 seed beads in there. When I'm coming out the jet bronze, add a 15-0, sew up towards the button of the pastel petrol, add a 15-0, sew down through the jet bronze. I'm just going to continue adding that seed bead between each the pastel petrol and the jet bronze, and then you'll see a little bit of thread exposed between the others. So continue adding your beads so that one of the DiscDuos sits directly on top of the other, adding in the 5 seed beads and then the 15 O's just between the jet bronze and the pastel petrol. So as you look along the line now, you'll see that you have your seed beads in between your jet bronze and the petrol, and then you just have thread showing between your areas that are going to get your petals. So the petals for this cactus flower are actually added on the sides of our DiscDuos here. They're going to be added every other, so we have the sandalwood color on the one side, and on the other side we have that sky color that we're going to be adding them to. When you get to the end and you're coming out of your last jet bronze, what I'm going to do is lock that jet bronze in place, and I kind of move my stop bead a little bit just to get it out of the way. I'm going to lock that last one into place through that square stitch technique. And once I'm coming out the top of the jet bronze, I'm going to get ready to come right back down my project. To come down the project and to be able to add in my petals, my thread's coming out my jet bronze here at the top. I'm going to scoot over to the other side, go through the jet bronze and through the 5 seed beads after, and through my sandalwood bead. My thread is then going to come out after that sandalwood bead. If you want to, you can decorate the end here with 4 15 O's or 3 11 O's. That's up to you. I'm just going to leave it plain. At the end here, once I'm out the side, this is where I get my little petals on the cactus flower. If you look at the petals here, this is kind of them in their simplest form. We do an 11 O seed bead and we go through one hole of the DiscDuo, go down to the other hole of the DiscDuo and an 11 O seed bead. I'm going to make it a little bit prettier by adding 4 of my 15 O seed beads to the ends. That's how it also makes it look like that cactus petal. To do so, we're going to pick up one 11 O and one of our DiscDuos. Again, I'm using that pastel Bordeaux color. I'm going to pick up 3 15s and let that drop next to my project. Taking my needle and thread, I'm going to go through that second hole of the DiscDuo, and when I go through that second DiscDuo hole, my needle is going to be coming out towards the center of my project. Add another 15 O in, and we were coming out the sandalwood hole. Now what I'm going to be doing is actually coming out the sky hole here, going into that same side. I'm going to sew from the one hole that's closest to the button towards the hole that's closest to the loop. That's going to make my first little petal stick out. So you can see that first little petal kind of sticks out right like that. When I'm coming out this sky one here, I add another 11, another DiscDuo, and 4 15s. I'm going to sew from that first hole that I'm coming out of that DiscDuo into the second towards the project. Tighten up that thread with a little pull. Add another 11 and sew in from one side of that sandalwood bead to the other side. So I'm sewing right along the DiscDuos on this right hand side here, adding them in. That next little piece of that cactus flower will sit right in there. You can see that one right there. And I'm going to add 2 more in the same method. I want to make sure to kind of pull my thread in between those 2 beads. I add an 11, DiscDuo, my 4 beads to decorate the sides. Go from the top hole of that DiscDuo to the bottom hole of the DiscDuo. Once I'm out that bottom hole, add an 11-0 seed bead. Go from the right-hand sandalwood hole here to the bottom right-hand hole of that sky color and out. As you pull the thread tight here, you want to make sure that that petal stays inside of the 2 previous petals. And give a little pull. That puts our 3rd petal in place. When I'm coming out here, my last petal is going to get added in between and towards the center from that first petal that was in that same area. An 11-0 gets added. My DiscDuo, my 4 15s, sewing from that bottom hole there of that DiscDuo to the top hole. When I come out there, I add my last 11, and I'm going to sew from that bottom blue bead up through that sandalwood bead, going through that DiscDuo. At this point for the DiscDuo, it starts to get a little tight, but you want to make sure, again, that that bead, that petal, sits inside. So basically you're starting on the outer edge and then you're working your way in. That gets my 4th little petal there in place. Looks nice and fun. And then what I'm going to do is actually add the 4 petals on the top. You can see here at one side it's that sandalwood color, and here on the other side it's the blue color. So we have the bronze and the orange and the blues. To get to the next bead, all I'm going to do is sew straight down my 15-0s here, all the way down through the pastel petal, through the 15-0s, and out through, coming out that sky colored DiscDuo. When I'm out through the sky colored DiscDuo, I'm going to get ready to add my next top 4 petals. To add my top 4 petals, we're going to do the same way. I'm going to kind of turn on the side here. You can see those cactus petals in place here. When I'm coming out of that blue sky color, add an 11, DiscDuo, and 4 15s. So from the top hole there of the DiscDuo to the bottom hole. When I come out the bottom hole of the DiscDuo, I add another 11-0, and I'm going to sew through that sandalwood bead on the base line there, going up towards the loop. Once I'm there, pull tight, and that's going to put that petal right in place. When I'm coming out the sandalwood, I'm going to repeat 11 DiscDuo, 4 15s, back through the second hole of the DiscDuo so that the 15s decorate the side, add an 11, and sew through that blue sky color. Once I'm out the sky one, I get to add my next 2 petals in. They're repeated in the exact same way, and I'm going to push both of those towards the center, adding an 11 and a DiscDuo, 4 15s, sewing down the DiscDuo from one hole to the other. Once I have that in there, I add my last 11, and then I'm going from the top hole of that blue bead there down to the sandalwood bead and sewing straight across to the other side of the sandalwood. When I pull this thread, I want to make sure again that that new little flower petal of this cactus flower goes in between. And there we go. Once I'm out here, again, I get ready to add my last petal on this side. I add my 11 and my DiscDuo and my 4 15ths. So from the top hole to the bottom hole, pull tight, move that first petal over so that way you can get in between here. Kind of push that into place, add your last 15, and sew through your blue bead. Before I pull tight, I make sure that that's on the inner side. You should see those 11-0 seed beads line up right next to one another, just like that. And there you see your little second set of your petals. I'm going to continue adding the petals. Actually, we could do it every other, that would look fun. But we're going to add our petals going right along the edge here, adding 4 of the little cactus flower petals above each one of my blue and my orange beads. Just showing the progression. So you have one side of your flower that we're working on. I'm on my 6th flower on that first side, so I have 1 more to go. And I had to dump out a little bit more beads. Pretty soon I'll show you how to add some thread because I am getting to the end. Just as a refresher to watch, you're adding your 11-0, your DiscDuo, and then your 15s, running your thread back through the DiscDuo, kind of holding that bead in there, pushing that down in place. You want it to sit between the two. Adding an 11-0, sewing from the top DiscDuo into the bottom DiscDuo. Coming out the other side. When I'm out the other side, before I pull really tight, I just want to make sure that those seed beads sit in line and cooperate nicely. Making sure that they sit in order. So pull that thread in. There you go. It's in there nice and tight. Both sides, make sure that you have it in there correctly. And I'm going to add my last little petal in there. And then I'm going to have to tie my thread. It's really cool as you see this progress when you flip from one side to the other. I've been completely working on the blue side. So it's almost like an illusion when I flip it over to the opposite side. If you do happen to get a DiscDuo that has a little bit of a blocked hole, you usually can just poke through with your needle. I also keep on my bead mat here a thicker needle that I use to punch out holes. It's amazing to watch the process of how these beads are created, and that there's only a couple problems per batch because it's so labor intensive and such a small scale thing. I add my last 15-0 and I sew, or my last 11-0, sorry, and I sew through that top, going from the bottom to the top, making sure those seed beads sit right and in place. And there we have it. There's our next little petal section. To add thread, I'm going to come out the side here, and I'm actually going to add thread right here at this point. The nice thing is it's going to be kind of covered up there by my beads. I'm going to take my needle off my thread end, grab my spool, and I did start with about 5 feet. I usually start with a little bit less than you because it's a lot to pull through on camera. Pull about 3 more feet off here. Take my thread zap, burn that off. Take this end that I just burned next to the old end, and I'm going to tie a new loop around the old thread. So taking the new thread, I tie a loop around the old thread. So the old thread is not involved yet in the threading, in the tie. I tie that around, and what that allows me to do is move it up and down that old thread. I pull the knot nice and tight, grab the old thread, and push that knot down next to the beads. Grabbing the thread ends here, Then I tie the two in a square knot right over left, switching hands to do left over right. I'm just going to burn those thread ends down a little bit so I know where they are, because I will glue them to glue the knot and create a little bit of a blunt end with my burner as I continue. I'm then going to thread my needle on this new one here. If you have a thread end that has a little bit of a nub on it from your thread burner, just go ahead and flatten that out with your pliers. And then you usually, from that fan creation there, are able to thread your needle pretty easily. Usually when I try to do it on video, that's when I have trouble with it and struggle. Once you have your needle threaded and on, you're just going to continue on with your project. So I'm right there at the point where I'm going to sew back through those 5 seed beads underneath and continue on them to go up to my last bead. If you want, you could decorate the sides here of that DiscDuo with some seed beads as well, so it doesn't sit empty and blank. So once you're done one side with your petals here, you can see the difference in the sides. They look completely different because of the color difference. We're going to switch to do the same thing on the other side. Before I switch from the first side, basically to the second side, I'm going to use this opportunity to actually reinforce my clasp. To do so, I'm going to run my thread and needle up my last DiscDuo and up through all of the seed beads leading up to the button. Anytime you have a clasp or closure, you want to make sure to reinforce that, because that's where you're going to have the most tension on your project. Once I'm through those seed beads before the button, I switch then to the front of the button, going through, if you can, some of those seed beads, coming down then the button on the other side, going through those top beads that are used just for decoration purposes, going down the other side and also through all of those beads there. Once you have that there, we're going to go through the 15 on the side, and we're going to get to the bronze bead here. Coming out that bronze bead, I'm going to go through the 11 O's, or sorry, the 15 O's, and then go through that sandalwood DiscDuo. And from there then, we get to add our petals in. So the petals get added on this second side, just like they did the first side. And once that starts to take place, you'll actually really see the flowers start. That you're going to add your 11-0 on a DiscDuo, 4 15s, back through that DiscDuo, and coming out the same side as the other 11, put on an 11. Then I'm going to go from the top DiscDuo bead to the bottom DiscDuo and sew through from one side out to the other. Give a nice tight pull to tighten up any thread slack that may be in there. Coming out this other side then again, add the next one. So from the bottom DiscDuo, from that blue color, then up through the sandalwood bead, going back towards the first one. When I pull that tight, that puts that second petal in place. And then I'm going to do the third and the fourth, just like we've been doing, adding them to the middle between these other two. So I'm right here at the end, having added all of my little petals in. You can see how fun it looks to switch it from one side to the other. So it's almost like making two bracelets at once, creating that blue side and then the orange and brown side as well. So it's fun creating those two different sides. It would look cool, and a little challenge to some of you guys is to do petals actually going every other way, almost snaking back and forth between the two disc duos. So there's a little challenge for some of you guys that like to watch the videos, get ideas, and then create your own. When you're at the end here, coming out of the last of your disc duos, I'm going to take my thread and needle just like we did with the previous side, and we are going to reinforce it. I'm going right up along the side here with my beads. Those 15 O's, getting close to the end here of my disc duo. When I'm out the disc duo in that bronze color, I'm going to go in and reinforce my end. To reinforce the loop, and we're actually going to tie off onto the end of our thread here, I'm going to go through that 15 O that connects the two disc duos together, and then I'm going to run my thread and needle the whole way through my entire loop that was created. So you're running that thread through the whole loop. If you want, you can run it through once or twice, that's up to you. Currently there's just one strand through it. Take that thread the whole way along. When I get back to the end here, I'll show you how we can knot off that stop bead and end that thread. Once we are done that portion, all we're going to do is burn and glue. Once you're back out the end there of the loop, I'm going to go through my blue disc duo, coming out towards the button away from the loop, go back up through the disc duo and out right next to the stop bead. Pull that stop bead away from the project, and then all I do is simply knot those two thread ends together. So just like I did when I was adding thread, we're going to do a square knot right over left and then left over right to finish it off. If you're a person that likes to weave your thread back into your design, you can do that as well if you don't like to glue. I'm going to get my knots in there, open up my super new glue, dab a little bit of that super new glue right in on that knot. I'm also going to come back to the original place where I added thread, that knot, and dab a little glue there as well. Let that dry just a tiny bit, and then I pick up my thread burner. I'm going to burn that thread off here. Once I have that thread burned off, I'm then going to take my thread burner and just burn the edges down just a tiny little bit. I like to do this while the glue is still a little bit wet, so that way it adheres to those burned down pieces. I'm going to pull up the extra thread here too. Same deal here. Now that I have the thread on, I'm going to burn those down shorter, and then I'm going to burn those down flush next to my project. Again, the great thing about this bracelet is you really have two completely different bracelets in one. They both have the same flower color, but they really do have different interior colors. So it's a great design to kind of change up to take with you if you're traveling at all, and you've got two bracelets in one. When you end up being finished with it and doing your actual gluing, you have the bracelet then done with your cup button. The more you wear it, the more it'll kind of relax a little bit. There is a lot of thread in this project, but it looks really cool on the wrist as well when you're wearing it. So if you hadn't had a chance to really play around with these disc duos, there's lots of options of kind of how to make them sit, how to connect them, how to actually use them as you're working with it, and how to kind of play around getting different designs. If you need any of the materials, again, you can go back to the beginning of this video to get some info on where to purchase and the links for that. You can also stop by, again, one of our Potomac Bead Company stores. If you want, you can go directly to PotomacBeads.com. If you'd like to stay connected with us more and get more info on different patterns that we do like this, as well as updates on the new products like our exclusive DiscDuo bead, you can actually subscribe to this channel and we'll send you out info as soon as we do publish new things. You can also connect with us on Facebook in our beading and jewelry making group. Ask to become part of that. Show us what you've made. We also have a fun contest going on right now there, so check that out as well. If you get a chance, again, go to PotomacBeads.com, shop online there with us, or check out where our locations are, visit one of our stores and stop by. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and have fun making this cactus flower bracelet.